Yes.
Yes.
Welcome everyone to this new episode of the Falco Community Call.
Let me record.
It should be already recording.
Okay, we're good. Sorry.
No worries. Please, before or during we talk, anyone in this community call, add your name, please, to the who joined section. And I'll start right now with this week highlights. I think that probably everyone already knows, but it's good to just talk a bit about it. We released 0.23 version of Falco, which Lorenzo called the artifact scope release, because basically in this release we went through a process of reorganizing all the artifacts that we had, thanks to an issue that Chris opened some weeks ago and that we already discussed in previous community calls. And in this issue, we mainly introduced a set of changes to the packages, to the Docker images, also to the Docker images name and to the scripts contained by some Docker images for to pay to what we decided during the discussion about artifacts between the core maintainers and the whole community. So this is the change log of the 0.23, which contains the work of the past month. Notably, users should be aware of the fact that the Falco driver loader script, which is basically the entry point of some Docker images of Falco, contains now some breaking changes. Namely, it looks for the Falco drivers to be called falco.o in the case of a BPF driver, or falco.ku in the case of the kernel module, and not anymore falco-probe. This was a choice also to pair with the decision that we made for the branding and naming nomenclature of Falco artifacts and Falco things. Another breaking change is about the place where we store the set of pre-built drivers for Falco that has changed. As also about this, we talked a bit during the past community calls. Now, just to repeat, to let the community know, the pre-built kernel modules and the BPF module probes are at this address divided by driver version. This is the driver version 96BD shipped with Falco 0.23. So every KO or .o file that you find here is a pre-built kernel module or a BPF probe for Falco 0.23. And the Falco driver loader scripts will, when it's not able to build the driver locally for your running environment, for your local machine, it will try to find the suitable one here in the pre-builds. Aside of these things, we also renamed some images. For example, now we introduced an image which is called Falco Security Falcon Driver, which is meant to be used in a more secure workflow of using Falco Docker images that comprises of, before initially running a privileged container with the Falco driver loader image that installs the driver, and then run Falco no driver, giving to the container only P3's capabilities. We also updated the Falco documentation about this. Let me see if I can find the page in 1 minute or less. And documentation running. Leo, Lore, Chris, help me if I.
Okay. Yes, is there?
Is there? I was talking about this workflow. So basically, we have a recommended workflow of running Falco with Docker, which is a workflow that uses the least possible amount of privileges, and is this one basically before running the Falco driver loader and then running the Falco driver image. And then we still retain the other way, which is the most simple one, but also is less secure of running Falco, the base Falco Docker image.
When we start looking at support for a Helm chart, understanding this is going to be very, very important to how we build different Helm charts. And as we start discovering which types of Helm charts we would like to have and where we draw the boundaries between having one chart or the other and what becomes a flag and what is not a flag, this is going to be a very important part of that. So I just want to make sure that we echo this in the charts repo at some point as well.
Yep, thanks. Then what else? In this release, these were the most important things, as Chris was saying. Then clearly, as always, a bunch of other minor changes like fixes for the pre-built lookup, aliasing the old slim image to the Falcon Driver 1, which in reality is very similar to an old image that we had that was called minimal. We finally moved the examples and the integrations directory out from the Falco repository to a new repository which is called https Falco security contrib, which by the way we are in the process of renaming into evolution, as Chris suggested. And here you can find the deploy folder, the examples folder, integrations folder. This is a community effort, so please help keeping it in sync, but we do not officially support, as we decided, these things. This is just a best effort to provide to our community various way of deploying, integrating Falco with existing environments and existing clouds and existing systems. Then I think that aside some rule improvements, we can now move on and connect the points from here to the second highlight. Okay, about the just to conclude about the release, Chris also updated the website with the logos of the adopters and users of Falco. Chris, if you want to say more about this, please do it.
Can I do a screen share and talk about this for a moment?
Yeah, sure. Please go on.
Thank you. Okay, so here's the HackMD. Let me move the Slack thing that always gets in my way. Lore, I'm sorry, I'm not on my square monitor. If you want me to move, just ask and I will move. We can go to falco.org and I will zoom in here. So I want to talk about why I did what I did for our project and for our community. And I feel like this is very important for us. So I simplified this. So as we as a project begin to talk about what we do, I think we're able to explain the value that Falco has very simply with 3 concepts. We access information about your system, we assert it against rules, and then we give you an ability to take action. And we can apply that in observability, in detection, in security ways. The use case is not necessarily defined, but what we do and how we do it is a very big part of the Falco project. I changed the name from Falco to the Falco project because I feel that the work with, like even today with Discord, with Slack, with our integrations, with Prometheus, with the Falco Sidekick and all of the implementations there, the fact that we have Contrib, the Helm chart, this is now becoming a project full of sub-projects and not just a single repository. Moving forward, the next thing I wanted to capture was this idea that Falco is an engineering tool. Falco is built in such a way that other folks can begin to consume it and use it in their applications. So in the top right, the very first thing you see is download, which you click here and you can see all of the download links. Here's how you install it on Debian. Here's how you install it on CentOS. And then here's the Docker images. But even more so, if we go back, we have in Kubernetes. And I think this is our biggest gap as a project right now, which is we have Helm. Now that we have Helm charts, this documentation will need to be updated. But this idea that we need, now that we have the core components, now that we have an updated website, our community owes the world how is the best way, like what are best practices for running Falco on Kubernetes? We need to clearly explain that. And so I think this is going to be up to a lot of us. This is going to take involvement from a large portion of our community to put this together. But I think we're finally at the place where we can start working on it. The same goes down here for different SDKs. We have these 4 now, and I imagine these are going to grow pretty quickly, and we're going to start seeing more contributions from other ones as well. Moving down, we'll talk more about this in a moment. This now goes to the Kubernetes Slack. Following up on the CNCF, and like I said, we'll talk more about this in a moment. Following up on the CNCF issue, the Falco community has decided that I would like for us to suggest that we should move to the Kubernetes Slack, and we have reasons for that. And if anybody has strong pushback, we can certainly talk about it. But I have a feeling everybody's going to be in agreement here, so we can talk more in a moment. Mailing list to the GitHub community, originally created by Sysdig. Now this part is going to be a big part of our project as it grows. And if we go to the Falco website repository, one of the things that I called out that I would like for us to be aware of is this section here on contributing logos. In order to contribute a logo, you must meet one of the following adopter types. You either are an end user, that is somebody who's consuming Falco and you have contributed your use case to adopters.md. You are a vendor, meaning that you're selling Falco as part of your commercial product and you have contributed to adopters.md, or you are an integration and you have documented your integration somewhere in the contrib repository, which is what we were talking about earlier with evolution. So this kind of puts a small firewall in front of adding logos so that we're not just getting logos that don't mean anything. They actually have to stand for something that the community has built and that the community supports. And then there's the technical detail of how to actually do it here. So the logos are important for folks who are not engineers. And as an engineering project, we owe it to them to make sure that we're as balanced as possible when it comes time to looking at these logos. So that's kind of the website updates. I would love feedback. I wrote CSS for this, so please be kind with your feedback. But that's the website in the shape that it is in now. And then down here at the bottom, of course, we are a Cloud Native Computing Foundation project. And I will hand it back over to Leo.
Thank you very much for writing a lot of CSS, Chris. It's very appreciated. I know how hard it is.
Yes, I wanted our website to look good, specifically because now when we're in conversation, we can just say go to falco.org and that becomes our main landing page that we're all proud of.
Yep. So going forward, as Chris and I already said, the contrib repository will contain the sandbox. It's like a sandbox for projects around Falco, deployments, integration examples, things like that. We drafted a process for projects that wants to become part of the Falco security organization, and the project basically can be expressed like a three-step process, which is basically what I've written here. Sandbox will contain opening an issue in the contrib repository, which will be renamed to evolution, with the label kind sandbox acts as a proposal for a project to become incubated, sandboxed into the evolution repository. Then In other cases, when the project gained some traction, it's proven to work, is something that the community really cares about the second step is promoting it to the incubation, which means giving to the project its own repository into the Falco Security Organization. In some cases, we could also directly promote some projects to the phase of incubation, as we did for the PDIG project, the new driver that past week we introduced, thanks to Grzegor, that unfortunately is not here today. The last step is the official support. Official support is anything that we have in the main Falco repository into its continuous integrations. Namely the deb packages, the RPM packages, the Docker image that we talked before, and things like that. So,
Leo, I have a question.
Sure.
So the naming isn't very important to me, but the consistency of the naming is very important to me. In most of the documentation, we do not use the word sandbox or the word incubation. So I would say that whatever word we pick, we just make sure that it's consistent across the documentation, the PR, and the labels.
I agree. This is just a work in progress. I put there like a point to discuss with the community. So this is the perfect moment to discuss. Let me just clarify putting a whip here. In this issue, I proposed that labels and I put those labels here, but I agree with you. Just let's choose together some nomenclature and stick with it and be consistent.
Yeah, I agree. And yeah, I incubation, sandbox, contrib, whatever, like it's all the same to me. So whatever we want to do is fine. I just want to be consistent.
Okay, this was just an attempt that I proposed in that issue to structure the process through issues to propose project paired with labels, with GitHub labels, so that we can easily recognize if a proposal is for sandboxing a project, for contributing a set of YAMLs, for example, YAML files, or for obtaining a repository inside the Falco Security repository, which is the incubation level. But as I said, I have no preferences. I just want to structure the process together with you all. Then, regarding this topic of incubation level, I don't know how we decided to call it in the end. This week, thanks to Spencer that moved the stable Helm Falco Helm charts from the Helm repository to the new one, we adopted and promoted the existing Helm into this new repository in the Falco Security Organization. So we now have Falco Security Charts repository, and I invite anyone with knowledge about Helm and that willingness to support it to help us to propose themselves as maintainer and take ownership of this. We already have some people that expressed this will, and I set up a PR. If you think that you can help with this, talk with the core maintainers on Slack, open a PR to discuss your name here, and we will be happy to have you on board. Chris, do you want to say something about the Helm chart, maybe?
No, I think it goes back to having the official Kubernetes guide. I feel that Helm will naturally be a part of that. And now that we have an understanding of what the community supports and how we support it, I think we just need to, again, it goes back to consistency, making sure we're using the right language, making sure we're clear about what the support level is and what the expectations are, and drawing a line between what our community says you should and should not do in production. That's all.
Gotcha.
Yeah.
Agreed. And last point, I think that last point is also something you want to talk, Chris, since you had a very long discussion with the CNCF about cutting off the current Slack and the current community to a CNCF one, namely the Kubernetes Slack. So if you want to know more, please do it.
Okay, so let me start off by, I'm going to kind of just share the conversation that some of the Falco maintainers had and with the rest of the community and ask for feedback. And again, like everything we do in Falco, everything is always fluid and everything is always subject to, you know, we can evaluate, we can iterate. This is a part of our community. I'm going to share my screen, Leo.
Yes.
So on the right side here, here is my current Slack. And if I accidentally share any private messages, please forgive me. So this is the Kubernetes Falco channel. There's also the CNCF Slack here, which has a Falco channel as well. And we have the slack.sysdig.com Falco channel here as well. So currently we have 3 different workspaces with 3 different channels. And the CNCF has expressed concern around that this workspace was created by a vendor and is not best practices for creating a vendor independent open source project, which completely makes sense and I completely agree with. Now, the question wasn't about moving. The question was where we should move and how we can do this to disrupt or to not disrupt people in their current day-to-day workflow. So given the constraints that the CNCF would need to manage one of these Slack workspaces, we understood that there was effectively 3 options. The first option was to move to the Kubernetes workspace. The second option was to move to the CNCF workspace. And the third option was to create a new workspace that we would then give ownership to the Falco maintainers and the CNCF over, and basically repeat the paradigms like we see with OPA, with OPA, with Open Policy Agent. And there's a few other projects that do this as well. So the fact that the Falco project is getting strongly encouraged to make this move is actually a really good sign, because that shows that people are engaged and involved in communicating with our project and that our project is successful. So the first thing that we noticed was in the Kubernetes Slack, if you go to the announcements channel, there's almost 100,000 people in this channel. The second thing we noticed was if we go to the CNCF Slack and we go to the general channel, there is 16,000 people. And if we go to a newly created workspace down here where we click on add workspace, there's 0 people in the channel. Because there's more engagement here, we felt that this would be the most non-disruptive way for us to move as a project. So what we can do is we can offer a few services to make this easier for folks if they're interested. We can do an export and an import into Kubernetes. We can contact, you can see here, there's a Slack admins channel in Kubernetes. I've got some connections with the administrators in the community to make things happen here if needed. But ultimately, a lot of this is going to be controlled by the community, and we would like to suggest that the Falco project officially move to the Kubernetes Slack. And if nobody has any comments or concerns about this immediately, we can talk about what that would look like from an end user perspective.
Yes, I have a pretty simple remark. If we moved into the Kubernetes workspace, I'm afraid people will think Falco is totally integrated with Kubernetes, but this is a piece of software that can run anywhere, not only in Kubernetes. We can use it directly on bare metal servers or anything else. So I agree. In this workspace, we will be able to touch a lot more people than in a newly workspace or in CNCF workspace. But I think it can create a kind of confusion between what Falco is really and what it can do also.
I strongly agree. In fact, like if you remember, one of the things I was pushing for was making sure that folks understand that Falco is first a Linux level security tool that then can be adopted into Kubernetes. And I think if you look at Kubernetes like an operating system and less like a platform, it makes it a little bit easier to understand. For instance, OpenSSL or systemd could potentially exist on the Linux kernel mailing list, but there could very well be work in those projects that have nothing to do with Linux at all. It's kind of a trade-off, right? Like, what do we value more? Do we value keeping the clarity that Falco is intentionally not a part of Kubernetes more than we value the Kubernetes user base? Or like which one would you pick if you had to pick one? Would be my question here.
I have no answers for my part. It's more marketing than technique.
Exactly, exactly. So I think given the constraints of if we had to pick between the three of these, if we go to the CNCF, we limit our project's growth and our outreach by about 80%. If we go to Kubernetes, we run the risk of convoluting the Falco message. And if we go to a third one, we run the risk of having to import users and having to basically grow a community from scratch. So given these three, I think the least invasive risk is the convoluting the message of Kubernetes. I would much rather have a conversation with users who are confused if Falco is dependent on Kubernetes or not in the Kubernetes Slack than I would try to invite someone to join a new workspace, and just so that we can have the conversation of, oh, if you want to run Falco in Kubernetes, here's the link for it. That just seems like it's kind of less work for everyone involved and would be less of a burden for maintainers and for the end users. And I feel like the same goes for the CNCF Slack as well. It's one of those things where it's like we have to make a decision at some point, and given the three options, this one seems the less worrisome.
I agree. Okay, sorry to interrupt this discussion. Let me say that I agree that moving to the Kubernetes Slack sounds to me the most feasible decision in this situation. But just let's move on, Chris, if you don't mind, because otherwise we will run out of time. And let's move to the agenda about what's going on right now on the code. First, I would like Lorenzo to step in and talk about work that he has done. I'm trying to help it a bit. Basically, it's ready. There are just some fixes to do. So I'm talking about the Unix socket for the gRPC server. Lore, are you there?
Yeah, so many people reported that they really wanted to use the gRPC server, but they were upset about the fact that to use it, you had to basically generate certificates for the server, for all your clients, and you know, that kind of setup wasn't really feasible to them. And this was, you know, complaint number one about the gRPC server. Complaint number two was that sometimes for them it's better to not even open a socket on the network, maybe like when running it in Kubernetes, like by sharing the socket, like they do for the Docker socket is better than actually, you know, opening a network socket. So, you know, many people actually had the two issues open about it, asked for this feature, and we decided it was, you know, relatively easy to do, and even if it was harder, it would have been done that anyways, but we did it, and this is the code. It's very easy to use. Instead of using the HTTP URL, you use the Unix URL, and it doesn't use the certificates at all. Although we could do that in the future, we decided this Unix socket just runs by like it is. In this way, you can also, I mean, by doing this already, I've been able to test issues in a more effective way. There's an issue that we are going to discuss about some CPU issues with the gRPC server, and testing that issue with this feature here was extremely easier than with the MTLS connection. And that's it. I don't have anything else to say.
So just to wrap up, Lore, this PR is a must really. There are some unrelated fix that needs to be done to get it merged, but we plan to have
it's too much technical detail for this.
Yeah, we plan to have it really soon. Just to wrap up people on the reason why it's not already merged in, because it's something that community wants.
Yeah, we had some continuous integration issues on some things that we're trying to do.
Yeah,
but
just that.
It's not important.
Nova, we need the Kubernetes guide. Chris? Is Chris here?
I don't think so. I think we can go with the next.
Okay, let's move to the next. Okay, this is something related to what we just said about some fixes that needs to be done for gRPC before merging that PR. We switched. We first of all changed the build of a step in the CI from using Ubuntu Bionic to Ubuntu Focal, which is the latest LTS of Ubuntu, for some reasons. Basically, the gRPC version that Ubuntu Bionic ships was not suitable for parts of the Falco that use gRPC, so we updated to a new Ubuntu, and also we fixed this so that we test that the BPF builds when we run makeall. And that's it. This is just a little PR. Then I would like to also, unfortunately, I say Grozeg is not here, but I would like the community to be aware of this terrific work done by Gnosec about changing the way that basically PDIG works, a part of PDIG works. This PR, to be short long story, is that this PR introduced a way to basically find the local and remote socket IP addresses, not bypassing the proc file system, which is slow, as we probably all know, but rather injecting the get sock name and get peer syscodes. And you can see the benchmark speaks from themselves alone. Basically, this is a terrific work and needed to be presented to community. Thanks, Nosek, also if you are not here. Moving forward, Leo Grasso released a new minor version of Event Generator, very useful tool. Leo, would you like to talk more about what this is?
I want just to say thank you to Spencer, even he is not here because he added another event. And I don't know, the event generator I think is growing, and now it's very useful. You know, we used it a few hours ago.
Yep.
Just to test Falco, and it was very useful because we can just do Docker run Falco security / event generator run, and that's
Would
it.
you mind writing that command into the document here, because maybe community can find it also in this way? And
Sure. Anyway, it's documented in the README of the event generator, but I will copy it.
The more we document, the more we educate, the more we help.
I perfectly agree. I'm doing
Okay, again, your talk about the issue you was mentioning before that was opened by Chris Mayer.
Yeah, please open it. Yeah. Okay. there was an user mentioning this issue. I did some profiling and stuff, and I noticed that we do. We have a bad code branch that tries to pop from a queue in a very heavy way. And Leonardo Di Donato has did some tests. These tried to do some patching, and he has a solution about
Well, calling it a solution, I want to be a bit more proud.
Yeah, but there are things that you can already do.
Yeah, thanks.
The user that reported said that they want to try to fix it, and I suggested them to come here and talk about it, but they are not here. So I don't know.
I think that they are here. Chris Meyer, let me just check.
Oh, maybe yes. I don't know.
Chris,
I just.
Chris Meyer is Scallop Bot, and which seems to be the same person.
It's the same person. Okay, so it's Chris.
Chris, are you here?
I don't know if you can hear us.
Yeah, can you hear me?
Yep.
Oh yes. Okay, great. I didn't know you were actually joining.
Hi, Scallop Boat.
Hey.
Hey, so have you tried to fix this already? Have you some hints, insights? I don't know, anything about?
I'm just kind of figuring out the lay of the land. I mean, if I'm holding anybody up, please don't wait on me, because I will be probably figuring it out kind of slowly.
Oh, gotcha.
So
No worries.
I would like to.
Chris, this is probably something that we're gonna put our eyes on because it's a critical issue. But this is also one of those issues that are very good for those that want just to, play with Falco and understand how it works by fixing an issue. So I would suggest you to continue trying to fix it if you have time, and propose a patch if you want. But at some point, if we don't hear from you, we will fix it, because it's important to do it by the next release, and we release every month. So in 1 month, we should have a fix for this. Anyways.
Ideally, we would like to provide a fix in the next month for this. Anyway.
So if you want some more context and credits on this idea to Leo, because I didn't think about it yet. The problem here is that we are trying to get information from many threads into a single thread that's used by the server. And why do you do that? We do that in a very heavy way, because we are basically a long-running service that continues to get those informations. So we probably need to build a thread local, a thread local pop, so that we can do the try pop there only once instead of many times per thread, and then pop on that local queue instead of popping on the global queue. So every thread should have its own local queue, and in the long-running loop only call that, which is extremely more efficient locally than calling something that has a mutex. That is probably the issue. Or we can find a way to avoid calling try pop so many times, which is another possibility.
Some initial experiments that I did, just for context, seems to help, but I'm not really pretty sure about it. I have to verify. We will do it in the next days. Basically, just by simply inverting the order of these two and enable short circuiting of operands in Boolean operations helps, because helps in the case when the client is not requesting output alerts with keep alive. Then, but this does not solve the problem that we have in the other case, which is to keep alive. So there's a part of the problem that can be assessed by just writing more smart code. And then there's another part of the problem, which is architectural, and this is what Lorenzo was mentioning just 2 seconds ago. Just to give you some hints in case you want to have fun with C++, Chris.
Gotcha. Thank you so much.
You're welcome. Moving forward, what else we have here? An update.
But please don't get discouraged. We have many tasks to do, and we are not going to do it like tomorrow. So feel free to continue getting your hands dirty with that issue, because if you fix it, is better than if we fix it. So.
Last 2 points, just an heads up to Spencer that probably Thomas is happy about this and can tell us more. Spencer wrote on Slack that his integration is plugin for Falco Sidekick to send output events to Discord, which by the way would be even better than Slack. It seems to be almost ready. So just an heads up to Spencer. I don't know, Thomas, did you follow this work as he already submitted a PR?
Yeah, sure. I've made a review of his code, so I know what it is. It's just, as you said, a new output for Falco Sidekick. It works well right now. We have a formatted message with colors for depending the priority of the event. The only part which is missing right now is to split fields into a nice view, like a key value for each part of the output.
Oh.
And like we have in Slack, we have the fd.name, container.pod, etc. This is the only part which is missing right now. And after that, it will be okay for the next release.
Sounds good. Thank you, thank you, both of you.
Spencer's did it.
Yes, but you did the review. It's an important part. Next and last point, Chris Nova.
Yeah, sorry, I'm here. I was sending emails. The Kubernetes guide. I talked about this earlier. It was up at the top. I put it after Lore's comment on Unix sockets because this kind of is a follow-up on that. But basically, I would like to kick off a small sub-project or working group that starts to document Kubernetes in production. With Falco. In fact, I'm gonna add the word production to my comment here because I feel that this is going to be a huge part of what us as an open source tool can offer the community. This is dependent on production use cases, and ideally we could have a tutorial, a guide, a blog. Maybe even some video footage around what this looks like. And this is, again, is going to require input from everyone here. Do we run with systemd? Do we not run with systemd? Do we support both? Do we run a proxy in a container? Where do we run the user space component? Do we use a kernel module, BPF? There's a lot of questions here that we need to answer and address. And as a community, the technical documentation here is going to be a big part of this. And I feel like this is probably the most critical use case that we see in Falco right now. In my mind, the vast majority of people who go to falco.org want to answer the question, how do I run this in Kubernetes? And as a community, I feel that we owe this to them. So we're going to need a lot of work around this. And I think that getting started on it, we're finally at a point as a community where we have all the components in place. We have the RPM packages, we have clear documentation, we have the container images building, we have the release. We now have a place where we have our palette built, and it is time to paint the picture. And I would like to start work on doing this. And this is a call for help for everyone in the community to please join me in creating the ultimate Falco on Kubernetes guide moving forward. So that's all I wanted to say.
Sounds good, definitely. So we reached the end of this new episode of the Falco Community Call. Let's just notify everyone that we already planned the next release for next month, in the middle of June. And you can take a look of what's planned and what we hope to achieve.
Who are the release masters?
Sorry, Laura?
I asked who are the release masters.
This time, you and Leo Grasso did release. So
Yes.
time, I'm available to do it with one of you two.
I can do if you want.
It's the third in line that you do, Leo.
I know. If no one, I meant if no one else wants.
We will switch. Ideally, we choose in the past to do in a chain fashion. So
Yeah.
I don't know if we want, we can also change that. I don't know what Chris Nova thinks about it.
In general,
I
I
think
want.
that I think that I owe everyone an apology for not being as involved in the releases as I could be. But I think no matter what we decide to do, it's up to our community, and we should make this as effective as possible. Maybe it would be helpful to just explain how the releases are managed now and how much time they take, and whether it requires two people or kind of paint that picture for us.
Sure. Since we have 5 minutes, we can do it right now if you all agree.
Yeah.
If we go to the main Falco repository, we can see a release markdown file that we wrote, which basically documents the steps needed to release Falco. The release now usually lasts 1 day, also less. The process is very simple and is as described here in this document. I'm pretty sure that anyone with minimal knowledge of Git and GitHub can release Falco. To be honest, the only concern will be to verify the artifacts of the release before drafting a GitHub release, a GitHub tag. That's the only thing, which means before to tag a new version of Falco on GitHub, try the generated artifacts, the dev packages, the NPM packages, the Darbo, the Docker images, in various environments on Debian, on CentOS, on Amazon Linux machines, and things like that. But aside of these ultimate steps, all the steps before are pretty straightforward. They comprises like opening a PR with a generated changelog, reviewing the issue in the PR merged and closed and things like that, tagging them with the appropriate milestone. It's just clicking buttons work, not really hard. So this is the process. If this was your question, anyone can participate. Anyone can show up and express the will to participate. As I say, we just need to have 2 people for the next month. I can put myself in line. No, I don't know who else wants.
I think, Grasso, if you're okay with it, doing 3 times in a row, that works for me. If not, I feel like sign me up, but like I said, I have a very bad track record of actually making this happen.
No worry. It's okay for me 3 times, no problem. So I can learn more about the process.
No problem. So I put my name and your name here. Okay?
Perfect. Thank you.
Last decision before we close this call. Next call lead, next call master of ceremonies. Who wants to do it?
Is it my turn again?
I don't know.
Yeah, put me down. I'll do it. It's fine.
Chris? No.
Yeah.
And here we are. Thanks everyone for joining. I declare this closed. I'll call it a day. And see you next week. See you all next week.
Thank you, Leo.
Thank you.
Ciao.
Ciao, ciao.